Thanks everybody so much for coming. Andy, Andy of Pete's is always so supportive of everything that I do, and I'm really so happy to be here at Pete's with this first storytelling night. And I'm super excited about the people who are here to tell the stories, so thanks for coming. Thought a lot about this. I started telling stories at the open mic recently. I became interested in the genre through the show on NPR called Snap Judgment, and obviously everybody knows about The Moth, and The Moth has become this super serious thing where really well-known writers are coming and telling their stories, and I'm more interested in the personal, people's personal stories. How we become entrenched in our stories, how my story has changed over time. I can tell the same story for years and years and realize it means very different things to me now than it used to. And just that these minor events in our lives, how they change us, and what people remember as important to them, and how that can translate to other people. And I'm nervous.
I'm afraid.
I'm afraid. And my friends came over earlier, and I realize more and more that I'm a total kook, and there's this man who lives in my building, this old Chinese man, and he's really crazy. And he screams in the hallway all the time, and my friend goes, "Who were you telling to stop screaming?" I was standing at my door yelling, "Stop screaming!" And it reminded me of this story, which I might as well just tell now because it's storytelling night. I once locked myself out of my apartment, so I was climbing down my fire escape, which I was doing all the time. I used to always lose keys. And my friend who was on the roof was like, "What's that?" And I was like, "I don't know, he's got laundry out there or something." And the guy was like, "I don't think so." And I got down there, and there was rotting bok choy. There were maggots and flies and insects all over this bok choy. And I'm banging on his window, and I'm like, "What the fuck is this? Like, get this shit out of here." And he was just looking at me, and I was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, my apartment smells like garbage." And he's like, and I finally finished screaming, and he looks at me and he goes, "3 more days." I was like, "I don't think so." So with that, our first person up tonight is Steve Klein.
Am I using this thing or no?
Is the mic on?
Yeah.
I'll use it because
I don't think it's on. So did I.
I don't know how.
It's not.
Just point to your mouth.
check. Probably don't really need it, but it's nice, you know, I come in close.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, I wanted to tell you an LSD story. I wanted to take you back to 1984 in a town called Bergenfield, New Jersey, where I went to high school. But the story is, I tried to take extensive notes and get this thing down, and everything is so non-linear, right? Everything seems relevant. And I promised right before here to Nora, look, I'm shaking, I'm fucking nervous too. I'm scared. And, I was like, I really want to go back to the Big Bang, and start with the whole creation of the universe, and it's a psychedelic story, so isn't that relevant, And the original replicant that then turned into DNA, and, the 4 billion year old life process that now led us up to here now, and it all seems so relevant and important, but I'm going to try to reel it a little bit. So, Yeah, so I'm in this town, and it's famous for its suicides too. You know, like, and basically everybody I ran with is dead. You know, and so it's a funny story.
Yeah, that's fun.
That's funny stuff, right? So, so the thing is, what was I? I was like 13 when I moved to this town, you know, and again, it's like sprawling, right? So like my mother divorces my father, who was this very like square chemical engineer dude, you know, from like Atlantic City. She moves us to this town in New Jersey. She's a psychiatric social worker. She has this client, Paul. He's a schizophrenic, alcoholic, diabetic, Irish Catholic, working class biker with the fucking Harley, and the you know, and whatever, like 10, 15 years younger than my ma, and it's a big secret. So, and now I'm in this new weird town with all these like tough kids, and you know, and I'm this fucking, you know, I'm spooked, man. Like I'm always spooked. So, I'm trying to find like a way of dealing with reality, and eventually I came to LSD. So I had, you know, I'm like this bright kid in all these AP classes, but I ran with nothing but burnouts and dropouts and derelicts and drifters and bums and criminals and like a real fucking fringe element that I was attracted to. So I had this one pal, Chris Curley, God rest his soul. He was kind of like my surrogate big brother, if you will. This strapping lad, Gaelic cat, like always ready to fucking fight, long hair, and at the time that elicited a lot of, you know, like he would always be brawling. Like we'd be hanging out, a carload of what they called jocks would come by, say, "Hey, faggot, cut your hair," and he would be like, "Fuck you," and then like 6 dudes would jump out and he would fight them all. Like one of those guys. And we would do this all the time. And I would just like stand there, you know, like in shock, you know, like fucking trembling, and horrible, you know. So one time I went with Chris to, he was a couple years older than me, I went with him to a Hans and Robin's place. And Hans was this tall, skinny, like German dude with a big mustache, and Robin was this big, like, beautiful, giant Irish chick, you know, with the freckles and stuff. It was like, there's some kind of nursery rhyme that I can't remember, right? But with the Jack Sprat, maybe, was like the tall and the fat, yeah, like that kind of vibe, right? So we go into this house, right, we're hanging out, and this is when I first heard Hawkwind, too, man. The German guy had, like, Hawkwind playing on the record player and stuff, and they pulled out tabs of what I've later come to, I think they called, like, orange, these little, looked like little plastic gelatin, little bubbles, like little squares, right? It was acid. I think it was orange sunshine. I don't know. And I drank. I smoked weed. I smoked angel dust. I sniffed coke. You know, but I never took acid before. And I hadn't shot drugs at this point either. Although I was really looking forward to it, man. I always had this syringe since I was a little kid that I liked to play with. And but you know. That's the end of the story, too. So, I keep giving up all the punchlines, like, yo, everybody's dead, you know, what's the problem with the non-linear, right? Like, so, alright, so we drop the fucking acid, right, and take the first hit, and, whatever, 20 minutes goes by, I'm like, I don't feel anything, give me another one, you know? And, I took another one, and then, you know, next thing I know, everything started getting kind of funny, you know, came on, and I had no idea what to really expect. So, then this other couple came over, you know, and they were, like, very nicely dressed and stuff, and things started to feel really weird, and I definitely thought something sexual was going to happen, you know, and next thing I knew, they're kind of ushering me out of the house, you know, and then I get outside, and it's nighttime, and everything fucking explodes into colors, and the whole geometrical progression of existence starts to unfold before my very eyes, and there's like a glimpse of the cosmic infinite, and I'm like, oh my god, and I'm giddy and euphoric and like, you know, all washed over with this sort of innocent yet orgasmic kind of, you know, sensation, and like, it's fucking tremendous. And, you know, and we had a great night, right? I mean, at one point in the woods, Chris Curley turned into a fucking Nazi, but like, it turned out okay in the end. And so I couldn't wait to do it again. So, fast forward now, I've taken acid like, I don't know, 1,000 times, and I'm selling this stuff. It was like my most entrepreneurial moment. I mean, I'm not an ambitious man. You know, the Jewish side, you know, Sicilian Jewish, the paranoia took over more the industrialness, you know what I mean? But as a kid, you know, I was really getting off on selling the LSD. I was making money. I'd go to Central Park and get 100 hits for $40. I'd flip it back in Jersey, you know, 1,000% markup. I'm like in the game. It was fun, you know. And but my trip started changing. So you know, I did a lot of research, right? So I was studying Timothy Leary and Robert Anton Wilson and Aleister Crowley, and there was this one particular book called The Psychedelic Book of the Dead that Tim Leary wrote with, who's now known as Baba Ram Das, be here now, but back then he was Dr. Richard Alpert, you know, this is like early 60s. And it was like a psychedelic manual for a trip that was based on this ancient material, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and the three bardos, right? So it was like, and the idea was, you know, it was about achieving illumination. And I was really into this shit, you know? And, but mind you, you know, I'm like walking around with this fucking rowdy, weird fucking crew. I'm a sidewalk commando, you know, that's what, I was a sidewalk commando. What a sidewalk commando is, if you don't know, it's what Paul, my mother's, the bikers, would call us kids that would like walk around with all the biker shit on without a bike, you know? And there'd be guys that are really into it with the fucking leather jackets and like the chains and the boots and stomping around. And I remember they would do a thing where they had like the Harley wings on the back that were like dripping and falling off, and that was supposed to mean your bike was in the shop, but you know this kid never even had a fucking bike. He would stomp around, you know? So I would kind of do the thing with the bandana, you know, just whatever, it's just fucking humiliating. And I was like, I want to be hard, but I'm so, you know, soft, you know, but I want to be fucking hard. And it was like this big fucking charade, and just trying to get through. And so I was studying the three bardos, right? And I said, I get it. It's set and setting. Like that's what Timothy Leary was talking about. Set is, you know, your mind, you know, what your mood is, your psychological state, and that will sort of color the whole trip. And the setting is like, where are you going to do it, who are you going to be with, all this stuff, right? And the idea was to, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the psychedelic manual, you're supposed to want to achieve the clear light, you know, and it's go for illumination, nirvana, get off the rebirth wheel and all this stuff. And, you know, and then if that doesn't work, then you enter the second bardo, and that's the world of the ego that is just disintegrating under the influence of the LSD. I mean, all the filters in your mind just evaporate, right? And you're bombarded with millions of bits of stimuli every microsecond. And, you know, evolution has taught us to field out most of that shit. So, like, when you need to eat or fuck or shit, you're not like, you know, over here examining the molecules, you know, playing against the surface of, you know, what we call reality, which once you take the acid, you realize that it's nonsense. It really doesn't exist. And then you get into the quantum physics thing, and, you know, like, and it was the 8 stages of evolution, too, that I was trying to organize. I mean, the first level is the bio-survival thing, you know, good tit, bad tit. Then the next thing is the mammalian, territorial, you know, like hold your ground. And you see the kids go through these stages, and the socio-sexual, political level, and then you get the hedonism, and then psychic powers, and telekinesis, and then you start actually altering your own genetic material, like Monsanto does now, with you know, combining fish with tomatoes and soybeans, and then eventually you actually imprint your individual consciousness onto the subatomic matrix and become one with the universe, and you know, Satori is achieved, right? So I was trying to do all this amongst the crew of like the jailbirds and bums and drunks and derelicts and fucking demented, psychopathic, you know, some of them did actually turn out to be murderers. Kid I used to steal bicycles with turned into a double murderer. You know, we went from stealing bicycles to now I'm gonna start fucking killing people. And a lot of them, anyway, so this one particular day we took the acid, and I was like, every time I took LSD, I would get this thing where I've been duped. I've been fucking tricked. Like, it wasn't my volition. I did not think somebody dosed me. But I would take the tab and immediately think, they fucking got me again, man. I'm such a sucker, you know? They fucking duped me again. I can't believe it. And it starts to lift off, and I'm like, fuck. Even I would think, like, my mother's in on it, you know? It's some big experiment. So this one time I'm hanging out with Chris Curley, God rest his soul, Steve Kessling, God rest his soul, a month apart. They did themselves on the freight train tracks. And then it was Tommy Mars. He was like a schizophrenic guitar player. He would speak through his guitar. He would never speak, but when he played guitar, that's how he would communicate to the world. And that was like my core crew for the evening. And then it expanded to some fucking alcoholic fucking dude's house, and then his little sister's boyfriend came over, and then that's what like opened up the gates of hell for me. And I'll get to that in 1 second. So my point is, I would take the LSD, right? And I would feel duped and like, shit, they're gonna fucking get me this time, you know, because it's all plot, right? And I was looking around at these guys, and you know, when you take acid, like everything starts to dissolve, not just your ego, but just the whole mechanics of daily existence seem absurd. You know, hey dude, got a cigarette and shaking hands, and you're driving cars and stuff. It's all like, what is this nonsense? You know? And God, I used to have it in me. I'd be on stage where I used to play drums in rock and roll bands, and I'd get up on stage and I'd be behind a kid about to play a show. I'm like, what are these things? You know, like, what to do? I never understood how guys, like, how come all these movies you got guys, if somebody hands me their cell phone, now I'm into technology, but if I got like an Android and you got the iPhone, I don't know how the fuck how do guys in the movies show up in like an alien planet and another plane of existence, hop right in a spaceship and just figure out the controls? I don't fucking get it. So, anyway, so my point is that I started to feel the effects and I knew I had to get the fuck out of there, right? So now I'm like rifling through the Rolodex of you know, social ruses to like, oh, you know, I'm kind of tired. I think I'm gonna take off, guys. I'll see you later. And this one guy said, you can't leave yet. Jesus Christ. Uh-oh, now I'm in for it. And they wouldn't let me leave the fucking house. And then anyway, like the race riot started and the bullets were flying overhead and I'm like, holy shit, it's going down. And I'm trying to appease like Curly now, like you're right, John Lennon is God, and we're fucking running through the streets. So we end up at this guy's house. We're sitting around a basement, you know, listening to fucking records, whatever, and everybody's all brooding and sitting in chairs, and every once in a while, like somebody like knocks a piece of furniture over, and it's like this very tense, sullen atmosphere. And then this one guy, Harry, comes down with his fucking glasses, and he sits down. It's a waterbed, right? And he sits down on the waterbed, and he goes, "Hey, Clyde, how do you like this bed?" And I'm like, "Ah!" You know, and I fucking like, "Oh no, I am gonna be the sacrificial lamb, man! These fuckers are gonna rape me!" And I fucking ran out of the house, and I ran through the streets, and man, I just lost my fucking shit, and somehow I made it across town back to my mom's house, and you know, there I am in my fucking sidewalk commando gear, you know, and in my mind I'm all covered in cum and blood and vomit, and like the shit is going down, and you know, I slink into my place and, you know, go upstairs. I lived up in like the attic, and like Curly's brother who lived up in the attic and had the place wallpapered with pornography. We would go up there and smoke pot in his fucking... Boy, his house was fucking trippy, man. Like, it was like a haunted house with the grass about 5 feet high, and it was never painted, and inside the walls, like the plaster slats were all broken and showing, and, you know, he used to fucking like brawl with his dad, and it's fucking weird scene, man. Pretty grim. And, you know, cockroaches just undulating on the walls and everything. Anyway, so I got back to my place, and I got into my fucking bedroom, and I looked around at all my stuff, and I was, and the whole, that duped feeling, you know, like, wow, this is just all a big sham, and I'm, you know, this is, and I picked up this guitar, and I just started smashing up my house, you know, and next thing I know, the lights are going, and I'm, like, wrestling with, you know, cops and EMT guys in my own bedroom, and I was like fighting for my life, and the whole plan to achieve nirvana and illumination just kind of went south, and now I'm in hell, and instead of like staying, you know, I'm not attracted or repulsed, I was totally attached to this desperate animal ego identity, and I get hauled out of my house in fucking handcuffs and, you know, on a stretcher, and I'm in the fucking hospital getting shot up at Haldo, and my pants down around my ankles, and like the 4-point restraint, and like I'm singing, you know, alternating between my phone number and some girl I had a crush on her name, and it was nuts, you know. Next thing I know, like, there's an old man asking me in the, you know, recovery room, like, what were you, in a car accident? I'm like trying to explain, you know, why am I so banged up? You know, how do you explain it? You're just fighting with like a fucking bunch of cops in your bedroom. And so it was like a psychotic episode. And schizophrenia and the psychedelic experience are clearly very related. I work with schizophrenics, I live it, very fucking related, and shit, man, we're turning into a whimper instead of the bang. I think I peaked already, didn't I? I blew my load. Did I blow my load?
No way.
So I shifted into the second gear?
You're a genius.
Okay, I'm gonna shift to the second gear. Put these up there. Ah, man! Ah.
Then what happened, Steve?
Well, while I was lying on the gurney, here's where the spiritual part kicks in, right? So remember the guy said, you can't leave yet. Well, I'm lying on the fucking gurney getting shot up with Haldol and spitting at the nurses and trying to bite them and stuff. And the hallucinations, which, like I said, they were spectacular in the beginning, like the Cosmic Infinite was truly apprehended. After they shot me up with the Haldol, the hallucinations started getting cheaper, you know? It became like a bad carnival, like, just like the mechanics of people's bodies became very sort of plastic and ungraceful and without, you know, like my central nervous system becomes too refined, it becomes too sensitive to this. And so the hallucinations themselves stopped being spectacular and glorious and became very cheap, like these ugly neon signs, and I kept banging my head back to try and turn them off and make them stop. And that's when the voices came in my ear and were like, Steve, you can go home now. You can go home now. It was the fucking holy guardian angels that Aleister Crowley used to talk about. Right? It's telling me, like, you can shuffle off this mortal coil, dear friend. The game is over. You can go. You can go. You can leave. You're done. Nightmare's over. Just let go. The silver cord will be cut, and you will, you know, pass on to the next world. And it was very fucking seductive, man. And I really wanted to go. And then I had this flash. What in transactional analysis they call the final display, you know, and I didn't want my final display to be this. My poor mother, you know, God bless her. I didn't want this, you know, to leave her like this. I just thought it'd be fucking gross, and came back, and I stopped taking acid for a while, and moved to New York City, got a punk rock girlfriend, started shooting heroin, and as you all know, nothing bad can happen when you're shooting heroin. I don't know, that's good.
My secret is that when I wanted to do this night so I could hear Steve Kleiner tell a story. And, I don't even know. There's nothing to say. I have nothing to say, except for I will say. I once was taking acid, riding my Schwinn with a shock absorber around Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette, and it was like a beautiful summer night, and this woman was like, "Stop, thief! Stop, thief!" And I threw my beer in the trash can, threw my cigarette down, chased this guy. I was bald. Chased this guy on my bike, caught him. He was like this big dude. He had this woman's purse. And he looks at me like, what the fuck? And I'm tripping. And I was like, I'll just drop the purse. He was like, what? I'm like, just drop the purse. And he looks at me, I'm like, you better hurry, because they're coming. And he's like, all right. And the guy drops the purse, and he starts walking away. I'm like, I'd run if I were you. Running. And then I'm there with this purse, and these people are like, oh my God, thank you so much. What's your name? And I was like, Wong. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it, man. I liked acid too. That's my story there. And next, we have Tinu. I don't know how to say your last name, Tinu.
Oh, it's okay.
But we're very excited.
How are you? Hi. It's Oye Lobo, just in case you were wondering. Yeah, Tino de Oye Lobo. So I'm new to New York. I've only been here. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I've only been here a year and a half, actually. I don't know. Is that still new? I think it's new. Yeah. So, I came here from Chicago, actually. Chicago. And before that, I was in Milwaukee, and before that, Seattle. and I was raised in Florida and born in Texas. And so when I decided to come to New York because I got into a grad program. And I was thinking, okay, I never thought I would be the one to go to New York. And but I had a lot of family here in New York. My father and my mother met here in New York. And my father's Nigerian, my mother's African American. And, or what I like to call, I'm half-African, just in case you're wondering. Anyways, so they met, and so a lot of Nigerians that came here, they kind of stayed. And so there was a lot of family that I didn't really know, and didn't really have the opportunity to grow up with, and so there was that too. So when I decided to move, one of the other things was one of my good/best friends was living here, and we decided we were going to move in together, and so we're really excited about it, and she was living in Park Slope at the time. And I remember we kind of were discussing how we were going to do things, and it was June, and I was supposed to be out there in August. And she, we start looking for apartments, and everybody that's telling us is like, oh, you need to wait the month of to get your apartment, because that's how New York is. It's like, okay, got it, we'll wait, we can wait. So we're just slowly looking through Craigslist and stuff little by little. And I go ahead and I move. I take all my stuff and put it into U-Haul and move and live on her couch in Park Slope for a couple weeks up until we ended up finding a place at the end of the month. And I didn't realize that New York, specifically Brooklyn, has phases. And so there's like the phase one where you're like, oh, I live in Brooklyn, and it's like Park Slope, like there's kids walking, or like Carroll Gardens area, these really like pretty places, you want to raise children or something like that. There's coffee shops. And when we started looking at apartments in our group range, it was really funny because we were looking at like Crown Heights and like the rough side of Bushwick and like Bed-Stuy and everything like that. And I was like, this is so interesting. I didn't realize that we were like, is this still Brooklyn? And so we eventually like moved in. We found an apartment literally on the last day, right before we were about to leave. And it was literally the day of, we were searching and searching, and we came across this broker. And this is kind of, New York is very, very specific with how they deal with brokers. And brokers can really be anybody, you can decide you want to be a broker and so forth. And you show apartments, and it's kind of like first come, first serve with how you go about getting the apartment sold. And so, like brokers, they try to like upsell, and so the areas that we were looking at that I didn't realize weren't really neighborhoods were like Bedford Hills, which essentially is, in case you're wondering, it's just from Franklin Avenue, from where Doe starts, all the way up into, there's a bar on the corner, and it's probably about 2 blocks long, but it's considered Bedford Hills. And so I was thinking, okay, that's crazy. There's like 2 blocks of a neighborhood. All right, cool, awesome. But we didn't end up living there. We ended up actually living in Bed-Stuy. And the night of, we actually waited by the door and waited to get clearance to get into the apartment. And we quickly ran through the apartment. We looked at it. We're like, okay, it's fine. Let's like do what I need to do. I'm going to sign. We have a place. And so literally like 24 hours later, we're getting the keys and we're moving in. And it's great. And didn't really think about everything that was involved in looking at an apartment. And what I would later find out, and one of the biggest things that I found out was that we had cockroaches. So, being from the South, I thought, okay, I got this. Cockroaches, not a problem. I've seen cockroaches. I've seen flying cockroaches. I can do cockroaches. So I did what I knew. I first bought this can of Raid. It's like, that's all we need. We got Raid, we're covered. And I'm like spraying in on these cockroaches, and they kind of look at you, like they look at you and they just kind of walk away slowly, and you're just like, okay, well that didn't work. So then we went through, and I tried this next method. I tried like little roach motels, because someone told me, oh, you need a couple of those. So we put them everywhere, and again, same effect. So we're just like racking our brains with what to do, and by then we become like professionals at how to try to get rid of cockroaches in New York. And so we go and we hear about this borax, and I'm sure y'all know what borax is. Not judging anybody, but I'm just assuming. So we go and buy borax. And the thing about borax is it's a very specific set of ingredients. Like borax, if you read on the back, you're supposed to lightly dust so that the cockroaches, when they walk across, they don't realize they're walking across anything, and they slowly like dry out from the inside out, right? So we do that, and I'm very proud of myself because I've figured this out. Like, I'm becoming a New Yorker. It's good, you know? And and so all the way in Queens, I have an uncle who goes by the name of Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam's on my father's side. And if you're familiar at all with Nigerians, so most Nigerians, my father included, they have a very like guttural sound. You know, for example, like my father, he's like, hello, my name is Babatunde Oyelo. You know, like very deep sound, right? But Uncle Sam, he has this really high pitched sound, and it's different, you know. And he also thinks he's really, really funny. And so he laughs at all of his jokes. He's a really great man for that. And so, so we are moving in, and one day, I get, you know, the knock at the door, and I open it, and I'm like, oh, hey, Uncle Sam, how you doing? He's like, you know, I did, oh, my darling. And he comes in, and I'm like, hey, Uncle Sam, yeah, I'm in New York now. He's like, oh, you're in New York. I was like, yeah. And Uncle Sam brings with him a 5-pound bag of instant Quaker oatmeal. I don't know why. I decided. And a thing of instant coffee. And he puts it down on the chair, and he asks me, he's like, oh, you know, I hear you have a roach problem. I was like, yeah, Uncle Sam, I do. I do have a roach problem, and I'm glad, you know. And he's like, oh, what are you using? What are you using? I was like, oh, okay, Uncle Sam, I think we're going to cover it. We got this borax going. He looks at it, he's like, oh, this is good. And he opens up the bottle. He's like, this is what you need to do. I was like, oh, okay, Uncle Sam. And he goes over to this tiny little crevice in between our refrigerator and our wall. And he just pours out almost half of the thing of borax. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching him. And I'm just thinking, that is everything you are not supposed to do. And what am I going to do? And my roommates are going to think I'm insane, right? So, but, you know, and he's just laughing. This is what you do. It's good. It's work. And then out of nowhere, Uncle Sam pulls the refrigerator back and starts, like, pouring borax over that. And I'm, like, thinking, like, oh, my God, I can't get back there. Like, what am I going to do? And he goes over and he shuffles on over to our stove and like starts pouring all the rest of the borax behind our stove. And I'm just thinking, okay, that's it. I mean, I can't be rude to this man. You know, I have to let him do what he's doing. And he comes up and he's just laughing. He's giggly. He's like, oh. And he's about to leave out the door. And he turns around to me and he says, oh. Here in New York, you call them roaches. Here in New York, they house pets. And he just runs out the door. And I'm just like standing there, like with all this, like these fumes of borax, like completely surrounded by what is left of Uncle Sam's presence. And I'm just thinking, okay, I think I've officially been initiated into New York City. And long story short, we ended up getting an exterminator, which I highly recommend. And it will save you money in the long run and a lot of pain. But yeah, so now I guess I'm a New Yorker. Thank you.
Thanks, Tinu. And now we have Ben Kronberg. Somewhere, there he is. Ben.
I just want to record it for posterity is just like future ego, right? Like the people that I make will care about this. For posterity's sake. Because when I die, they're gonna look through all my stuff and listen to it and remember me and realize that I normally tell jokes and I don't do like story type jokes. There's like storytelling comedians and there's like other types of comedians like who do one-liners generally, typically. I don't get into stories about what happened. I'll cut to the chase about like a poop joke, you know, like a poop situation. I'll talk about a poop situation. But you know, when it comes to stories, like I love movies, I love listening to stories and being a part of people's stories. My friend tells a really good story where I'm like the main character of the story. Which both like flatters me but both makes me realize like, wait, that's my fucking story. Why are you telling my story? It's my story to tell. But as is the case with like, you know, doers and don'ters, doers and whatevers, I love ideas. And somehow I've learned, I've been fortunate enough to get paid for saying things sometimes, for doing, it's what brought me here and it's what allows me to sort of travel around is these jokes and these things and these whatever. And you can't take everything for it could be mine, it could be anybody's vibrating right now. You can't take for granted, is it granite or granted? You know, because I can make an argument for both. You know, it's like B-O-T-H, B-O-L-T-H. Which is it? W-H-I-C-H or W-I-T-C-H? Which is how it should be pronounced. So, I recently got booked on a gig in Baltimore. And it's like a gig. It was Baltimore. I only met this guy on Facebook. You know, it's like where things happen on Facebook. You know, so you can delete your account, but you're going to be interrupting your opportunities when you delete your account. You know, because it's like as frustrating and stupid as Facebook is, it's still this like essential common area. It's our new square. It's like a virtual square. It's where people go to meet and share their ideas. Like, you know, the Trastevere or Trastevere, however the fuck you pronounce it, is you know, yeah, you go there and you would like protest something, or you'd speak, or whatever your college campus. But now that people are doing it in a virtual realm on Facebook, we're like, oh, why are you doing that? I just want to hear, you know, like everybody has what they want to hear about and what they want to consume on social media, but it is really just this manifestation or echo of things that we've been doing already. We're just now doing them there. So I get a gig through this thing. That like somebody saw me talking, or saw that I was in this square, and they came up to me, they walked up to me and they said, hey, would you like to come and speak in my square? In a different square, you know? And that's what I do. I speak in squares and tubes and circles and things. And so this show is really nice. It was like the right people, the right place, a cool rock club, and my deal for like traveling is like pay for my travel, give me a place to stay. If I make a little money, cool, but I try to get those things taken care of first. And so all these things were taken care of, so I could say yes. And then it comes time to actually sleep, which is usually pretty easy, right? You get drunk enough to where you can fall asleep. And so I did, but because I drank so much, I realized I'm probably going to have to go to the bathroom at some point. And when you're in a strange place, you really have to forecast where your bathroom trips are going to take place, right? If you're in a strange place, like if you have IBS, you know you're going to have to deal with it. Or a weak bladder, or a frequent bladder. So I knew I had to deal with it, and so when I was staying in this dormitory area. It was like kind of a common area with like games, TV, videos, but there was no bathroom in it. The bathroom was upstairs. The people that oversaw this place, but it's like a studio apartment with a bathroom in it. So if I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I would have to wake these people up and say, I gotta go pee or poop or whatever. You've all predicted these situations, I imagine. Making it to this point in life, you've had some poop conundrums, I imagine. So this is one, they let me go to the bathroom, like, you know, everybody's going to bed, retiring. Oh, I'd eaten a patty melt as well. We had, you know, right after the show, we went to eat at a diner, and I had a patty melt, and fries and mayonnaise and stuff like that. So I go pee, because I'm not going to force a poop. Forcing a poop is sort of like masturbating when you're not horny. There's this weird futility to it. You know, like say it's like, oh, I have alone time, so I'm going to touch myself. Well, that's not always the right time. You know? Even if you're not with somebody, you still need foreplay. Right? You need to foreplay yourself. You can't just go right to it. I'm sorry if I'm looking at you during this time when I'm saying this. It doesn't mean that I'm thinking about you. It means that I'm wanting you to connect with me. So, forcing a poop is like masturbating with, you know, no volition. Just like, you know, opportunist. Being an opportunist about your own genitals, you know? Like, I can touch them right now because, you know, like, nobody's looking. That's not the right time. Like, do you even want to, or is this just some weird fucked up thing that you do? So I go to the bathroom, get cozy on this couch that too many people have sat in, watch the TV that too many people have watched, decide to go to bed. I make it there, but then I wake up having to go pee again because of how much I drank. I didn't get it all out in the one, like, courtesy trip. But by this time, it's like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. and I have to go bad. There's no immediate toilet to go in. I'd have to go upstairs, knock on their door. I gotta go, you know, like, what do you do? This room that I'm staying in had like a couple windows. One of the windows overlooked this sort of like internal area of like the courtyard of this apartment dormitory. Maybe 2 floors up, 4.5, like a weird garden level that pokes out of the ground, and then this level. There's also a planter box right before the window with a really great plant in it, flourishing. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, he gave me water. After I went to the bathroom, he gave me a big cup of water, one of those like promotional Taco Bell small bottom, big body cups, you know? Like a big water. Like had for a while, the thing was worn off. Chicago Bears or something. They're all Chicago Bears. Big thing of water. I didn't touch it because I knew I'm not touching that thing. Because I knew that was like a trap. That was like if I would have like gulped that thing down, I would have definitely had to go, right? Like with no control. So I let it be. But in evaluating my options, it was like one of those puzzles, one of those like IQ tests or whatever. Given this situation, given these elements, these options, I also Googled on my phone where there were like hotels or 24-hour places that I could go, prop the door open because I didn't have a key, go to like some hotel, see if I could go to the bathroom, you know. I was in Baltimore, it was like a metropolitan area. But could that, you know, that was like second worst to knocking on their door. So I decide to take the water and pour it in the plant. To give the plant some water. Even if it's already been watered, it's still better than like peeing in the plant, right? And then what I decide to do is pee in the cup. Because it's like a place to go, and I don't know where else in this place I'm going to go pee. It's a room, carpet, couch, boxes. There's a window. Am I going to pee out the window? Has anybody here peed out a window before? Except Steve. Has anybody except Steve peed out a window before? I didn't know I needed to admit you on obvious questions, Steve. I thought you knew when it was rhetorical only to you. You have a special rule for rhetorical questions. I mean, I would like to. If I had had your insight or life experience bringing me into this moment, I'm sure I wouldn't have hesitated and done the right thing. Like I know everything. I mean, I knew everything was going to be okay. I knew everything was going to be okay. But I knew where I was putting my pee at first, which is the cup. But what I didn't take into account was where's the pee in the cup gonna go, right? Because I had a temporary solution. I knew how to get the pee out of me into some place that wasn't ruining anybody's life, you know, or infringing upon anybody. It was like maybe doing something despicable to this cup, but I think this cup, you know, it already had like Mountain Dew on it, multiple mouths. I think me peeing in it this cup wouldn't have thought that, oh, why are you doing this to me? You know, if the cup had a choice in the matter. It was a cup. And I was also curious about, like, oh, can I fill this thing up? But then I remembered from previous road trips that, oh yeah, I can fill this up. You know, like peeing, you don't realize when it dissipates and the level stays the same in the toilet, you think, I don't pee that much. But then when you, like, do, like, something of a smaller volume, that just, like, it's just like, whoa, you know, like you in fact pee a lot. So that happened. And that was cool. But then I had to get rid of it. So my options were, there was a washing machine down the hall. I considered the washing machine because I knew it had like some sort of drain, right? I didn't do it. I didn't do the washing machine just so you don't have to be grossed out. Or not let me crash at your place sometime. I'd let him stay, but he'll piss in our washing machine. That's not how I behave. But I was in a fucked up situation. So I decide to cascade it down the outer bricks of this wall. Not just like toss it onto the sidewalk, but kind of like, because there's nothing below me but brick. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna cascade it down the brick. Let the brick sort of absorb in the surface area of the brick and the texture take it. Like, pour it down that area, So I started doing that, but then it was so late at night, it was so quiet. And it was like nothing, it was like echoing in this courtyard. It was just as like babbling as a brook has ever been. The pee cascading off the bricks were like, alright already. So I just kind of chickened out on pouring the whole thing there. And then I was like, because the planter box was there, I just decided to pour the rest in the plant. Just a little bit though. I can take a little bit of pee, right? Isn't it only females' pee that ruins things? If you have it's like that with dogs. It's like that with dogs. I'm not making that up. It'll burn your backyard, I promise. I grew up with a female dog. And a male dog, they were dachshunds. Their poop had the same effect, but their pee was different. I don't have to explain myself. Anyways, I poured pee in a plant. And I didn't mean to genderify the issue, okay? I didn't mean to bring ladies into this. I'm sorry. So I took care of the liquid. And that was fine, but then I woke up feeling the patty melt. Because usually when I eat, I'll poop right afterward. Some people are different, ladies especially. They have food in them for 3 or 4 days, and then they go. I haven't gone. So then I'm like, okay. Getting rid of the pee was like a level 3 challenge of difficulty. What do I do? How do I not poop? Where do I poop? I'm not pooping in the washing machine. I'm not pooping in the planter or down the side of the building. My pee options are not the same as my poop options, even though usually they are. We put our pee and our poop in the same place. And it's like, oh, that's where they go. But when you have to improvise, you realize, oh, they're different. You can't just poop anywhere. Unless you're drunk. Then you can, poop anywhere you have to. So what I decided to do is, I had my phone, it still had battery, I decided to Google how to keep yourself from pooping, because I'd never done that before. I've Googled some pretty horrible things, but I've never Googled how to keep yourself from pooping. Have you guys? You can answer. I mean, do you guys have ideas in your mind about, this is what I do when I don't want to poop? I mean, other than muscle control and become very goal-oriented. Okay, I find a place to poop. This is... what's on the docket today? Finding a place to poop. What do you want to do? Find a place to poop. That's... Figure out where and how to poop. We should all be able to do that. We should never have a problem having to do that, right? You should never feel, especially in a first world scenario. Maybe that's just whatever. I'm sorry. So, I found some really funny things, but I'm not gonna read what I found because it's the longer part of it. It just draws it out. It doesn't need to be drawn out. But let me just tell you that I decided to go with my gut instinct, which was produce a boner, because I knew there's times that I've had to go poop, but then had sex instead, and I could make it all the way through the sex. I'm 35 years old. I'm not saying I've had every experience, but I've had enough to know that usually pooping and boners don't coexist. Like they're not like at the same time sort of things. Though I've gotten a poop boner. It's different than a poop boner, Steve. The most erogenous zone on the male, or one of the it's your prostate. And so sometimes when guys poop, the poop rubs against the prostate, and it produces not a full erection, but an engorged penis that is commonly referred to as the poop boner. Anyways.
Very common.
How did the things that weren't common, you have to start saying commonly at some point. So I decided, okay, I have internet, 3G, I can look at, I looked at this Tumblr that was like a Tumblr of a porn star, but it was like, it felt cool because it was a Tumblr, you know? It didn't feel as bad. Or cheap, you know, and plus it has like a mobile version that made it really easy to look at. Well, I needed some help. I wasn't just gonna be like, I gotta go poop, boner, you know? Like I needed some assistance, okay? I needed somebody to bring water to my table so I could quench my thirst, you know? The spit I had in my mouth wasn't gonna be enough.
Oh my
That was an
God.
analogy. That wasn't like... This was a dry jerk. This was a dry jerk. Come on. That's why I didn't read you the story. Come on. Look. Not every poop you take will last. How many times have you been going poop and been like, why can't this end? Why should poop stories not echo that? Why should a story of poop not make you similarly uncomfortable as actually going poop? You know? Why should you escape the fate of this thing that is such a fucked up loop in our life? So, I made it till dawn because I knew they were going to get up at some point because they had to work. Made it till dawn, everything's subsided, the boner theory worked. I didn't poop anywhere I shouldn't have. I peed a couple places that I shouldn't have. But then I still had to figure out, what do I do with this cup? Because this guy's going to come down. Do I tell him the story? Do I relay to him like everything that happened? Or do I just take the cup up myself, wash it in the sink? None the wiser. Well, I took the cup up, but I didn't wash it out. I just put it in the sink. And I never told him the story, so don't ever let me stay with you. Especially if there's not a bathroom, because left to my resources, I won't make decisions that are for the good of everybody. I'll be so self-interested that... Sorry.
Ben Kromberg is amazing. And I also wanted to say I'm completely charmed by Tinu, and I did not mean to move so quickly. That happened because I met Tinu because she works at a coffee shop, and I'm always very careful not to identify people with where they work, and that's why I wanted to say, like, you know, there's a reason each of these people, I've asked each of these people to come here, and it's because they're people I find completely charming. And so I wanted to say that. I didn't mean to blow past that. I got confused about how to not identify her with how I met her, but that is how just always enjoyed listening to her talk. So, with that, Bruce Martin I've known for, I don't even know how many years. I've known Andy for 30
or 40.
30 years, a lot of years. And I've known Bruce for probably 25 years, like 20, a long time. And so I'm super psyched to hear. No.
Can I sit down?
You want this stool, Bruce? Okay.
Well, thank you, Nora. I have nothing to say, and I am saying it. That's a quote by John Cage, who's a composer, who also did a lot of lectures and spoke a lot, and kind of got me interested in the similarity. I'm a musician, so it got me interested in the similarities between the way music communicates and the way language communicates. And that being said, this is a story about an egg salad sandwich, which is not the same as nothing, but it. And in all honesty, I made an outline, and the first thing on it was the Big Bang too. I went right to theoretical physics. I thought, well, I'll try to weave it all in to this Stephen Hawking's film, which I never read the book. I saw the film of his. It was a film of a theoretical physics book, and I felt okay about that because when the Bob Dylan record Love and Theft came out, I listened to it a whole lot, and I was really into the lyrics, and I was really amazed at how he could fit these really conversational speech things into the metrics of the music, into the meter. And there was this one line, I didn't think I was going to say this, but I will say it. There was this one line in there that was, she said, "You can't repeat the past." I said, "You can't? What do you mean you can't? Of course you can." And then around the same time I was reading The Great Gatsby, and in that book, Carraway says to Gatsby, "You can't repeat the past," and he says, you can't repeat the past. He says indignantly, "Of course you can." And I thought, well, that's cool, like Bob Dylan's reading Fitzgerald. And I told a friend of mine that, and he goes, he probably just saw the movie in a hotel room. So I thought, if he can, then I can talk about Stephen Hawking. But I do love that idea. You can't repeat. This guy is so about wanting to force things back into the past. But this story is a reminiscence, and there's a lot of people here. It takes place just before I met Nora, but around that same time when I first moved to New York, and it's about the first time I ever went to Brooklyn, and so a lot of the stuff in the story, some of you guys may well remember, so it may strike some notes there, but or it may just be boring. But anyway, at the time I lived on 23rd Street in Chelsea with my girlfriend from college and another girl that we went to college with, and we had this 3-bedroom duplex with 2 bathrooms and a backyard, and it was about $300 a piece, and it was a great apartment. And but back then Chelsea wasn't all that spiffy anyway. Like there was a welfare hotel right next to us on 23rd between 8th and 9th. But it was a great thing, but still very different. So my first kind of experiences in New York were all in Manhattan, and it was exciting. And I had these 2 friends, one named Wilfred and one named Wilson, and everyone always got their names confused and called them something else, Winston. And but I met one of them at college, and the other one was the first one's best friend from high school, and they went to prep school, which means they had a better education where drugs and alcohol were concerned primarily. And we had a lot of fun. We used to hit all the dives. And they both grew up in New York, so they both knew New York real well. And we hit all the dives and all the hot spots, and we had a great time. And Wilson was probably the first guy that I knew who lived in Williamsburg. He went to Pratt. And like a bunch of artists at that time were in the early, mid-'80s, were moving in here and finding studios and lofts. Excuse me, I've got a kind of a cold, so I usually have a voice just like Sir Isaac, someone or other, some great actor who usually is super interesting, like James Earl Jones, kind of like that, but it's a little rough. And so anyway, I took the subway from 23rd Street, took the A train down to the L train, took the L train in, and to the first stop in Brooklyn, Bedford Avenue, so I knew I was told I could go to the first stop. So I went there, and I came up, and so now as I was thinking about this story, I was thinking about that station back then. And the L train was kind of like one of those trains that the G and the L was like, whoa, who takes that train? Who takes that crazy train? And there weren't that many people on there. There'd be about a dozen people on each car. And after a while, when you lived there, you knew half of the people on your subway car, or you knew who they were, and kind of that guy. And then there was this guy who worked in the token booth. And I wonder what you call those guys, clerks? I was trying to think when I was doing this in my head. Station booth attendant, token booth attendant, clerk, I don't know. But the guy who worked there was this wonderful guy who used to wave at every person that came up the stairs. When they came up the stairs and went through the turnstile, he'd make eye contact and wave. And I love that guy, and I've always wondered what happened to him. And precisely at what point he decided, I can't wave at all these motherfuckers anymore. There's too many of them. And I mean, I thought, like, what a beautiful guy. Like, he's working in this glass box, but he's still going to, like, make human contact, And so at some point he disappeared. And now there's a machine standing where he used to stand. And then that made me think about the little slidey token. You dropped your token in there. I know I had my 10-pack of tokens, and I dropped the thing in there, click, right? And but I don't know how many of you have ever noticed that there's a little readout screen, a little window next to the place where you slide your card, and it tells you how much money you've just spent or how much you have left on your card. But it also says no tokens there all the time, and I wonder like when the last time anyone needed that information was. And it makes me laugh because I know they spent a whole lot of money on some computer programmer, and that was essential, and now it costs so much more to take it away that they're just going to leave it there. And it's sort of a very antique, little, beautiful thing, So anyway, up I go onto Bedford Avenue, which, of course, I could tell you there was nothing on there. I guess that bar was there already, but nothing else, And take one block towards the river to Barry, go down the numbered streets, head south, and when you pass, then you'll pass Metropolitan Avenue. And that was a real dividing line between the Polish people and Latinos. And I mean, there's still a bit of that, but it was totally two different neighborhoods, two different ethnicities. And so then you get into the Latino thing, and so I was supposed to go to Johnny's bodega and use the payphone to call my friend Wilson, who was going to come down and open the door and let me up. So I went into Johnny's, and all the bodegas had this, half-inch plexiglass to protect the guys who were selling coke and dope and running the numbers from people who were trying to rob them. And they all smelled exactly the same. They all smelled like cat pee, and they all just carried a bunch of Goya products for making Caribbean food. And they were about 8 times as expensive as the Gristedes on 23rd Street. So that's the good thing about living in a poor neighborhood. If you can figure that one out. But so off I go, and there at 314 Barry Street on South 3rd Street is this big, factory building, and Wilson comes down and lets me in. And back then, there were still a lot of factories right in between the places where people were living and making all sorts of crazy stuff and plating metal and making clothes. And so this one had this weaving shop on the 2nd floor that was a Hasidic run operation, and they had these giant machines in there that looked like enormous sideways bicycle tires, like spokes, and then these arms coming off that were sort of like segmented spider arms, and each one had a different colored thread, and the thing would go click, 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 and the arms would flip all over the place, and there's a crazy sound coming out of there. I was on the 2nd floor, and the 3rd floor was where the wood hippies lived. And the wood hippies were these two guys, brothers, that owned a wood shop, and and they were painters, and they subsidized their painting by making frames and doing installations at galleries. But there were about 4 of them that lived in there, and they had their little cubicles, and they were all sort of coated with an even layer of sawdust. And when Wilson worked there, we'd come down in the morning and work, and I worked there for a while, and they'd all kind of come creeping out of their individual rooms, still wearing the same clothes with the same sawdust on them every morning with their coffees and long hair. So that was the wood hippies. And I'm getting to the sandwich, the egg salad sandwich. So then we go up to Wilson's place, and I'm just out of college. I did a couple of years of college, and I took a year off and floated around, and then I was in New York. So I was in my early 20s, and the sort of whole thrust of the story is that I had kept journals at that point, and I was trying to go through the journals and find one that had something about this in it. But the whole impact of the day, was more resonant than just your normal experience. And I remember, like, when I came out in Brooklyn and there were no tall buildings, there was just sky everywhere, and I felt like I was in Montana. So I was calling it like Big Sky Country. And so I go upstairs, and it's Wilson's groovy artist space, with these big metal rolling tables with squeezed out tubes of paint all drying and cluttered on there, and beer cans with ash, cigarette butts stuffed in them, and big work tables and easels, and like there was half the floor, so there were glass windows around 3 walls, and in one area there was this little like living area with a kitchen and a bathroom and a couch, and this couch was really incongruous. It was like his mother got a new couch, so she gave him this couch from her Upper West Side apartment. It was kind of like a big floral overstuffed couch, and he had a hot plate, and he had a toaster oven, and he had a little refrigerator. And so he pulled out this pan, and he boiled some eggs, and he got this big loaf of bread from somewhere. He cut that in half, and he put that in the toaster oven. And then on a chopping board, he just chopped up this onion really rough, really raw, big chunks. And when the eggs were done, he smushed those in there with a whole lot of mayonnaise and a whole lot of salt and pepper, and just smashed it all up with a fork. And then by then the bread was kind of nice and toasted. And he pulled it out and he smashed that on there. It was all like really bachelor cooking, And and I never eat egg salad. I don't know if I'd ever really had an egg salad sandwich until that time. But so then we just sat on the couch and we had Budweiser and cans, and we watched the Clint Eastwood movie. And it was like the middle of the day. It was 3 o'clock. And for some reason, this experience to me at the moment was like full of such potential. Like that my life at that moment was full of such rich fucking potential. And that everything was ahead of me. And that I was going to be sitting on couches in the middle of the afternoon, drinking beer and eating sandwiches. And I didn't really like Clint Eastwood, but he loved him and I was really into it. And so, like, how can that, one sandwich mean that much? And, and then I was thinking about, the whole black hole, and does time expand infinitely outward from one point, or does it contract and expand and contract? And so I've been thinking about life in that way. Is it an opening and an opening at one point, and then does it begin to be closing? And is that what the end of life is like? Your friends remain beautiful to you because your eyes become bad and you just see them the same. They're just blurry and beautiful. You never see them age. And then, so years go by. I ended up getting thrown out by that girlfriend. I ended up moving into another loft that Wilson used to own, and I lived in Williamsburg for decades. And one night, I was driving over the Williamsburg Bridge a few years ago, and I saw the moon. It was a full moon. And the thought occurred to me, it was, maybe it was November, because it was near a birthday that was a, significant number. And I thought, like, there's the full moon in November. And in the rest of my life, there's going to be a finite number of full moons in November. And, the number could be calculated on a piece of paper. It would be 2 decimal points. It's not a large number. And so then that was a huge thing, and it's almost the opposite of the sandwich. And but then the other thing is that the things now that mean the most to me, I find, are like if I'm just going along and all of a sudden a bunch of birds all take off and they just do one of those maneuvers, and at that moment I'm convinced that life is the most magical experience, and and if that's what the rest of my life, if that's what aging is going to be like, is being tuned into those moments, then that's okay, and that maybe what I understood about the sandwich in that moment was that there's a finite number of perfect sandwiches.
Thanks to Nora. Steve, I was going to hitch my pants up real high too if I got in trouble, so you stole that. But thanks to everyone. That was really awesome. Thank you, Nora.
This has been awesome. When Bruce was at the first night I met Bruce, we got stoned at Andy's apartment and watched the band's Last Waltz,
Oh,
which was the first time I'd ever seen that. And
I don't think I've ever seen it.
You call me a liar? And it did make me think your story, which was so beautiful, and I don't want to cry up here, but Andy has been like in my life. I met Andy when I was 16, and he's who owns Pete's and is here for all of you who don't know. And he was always the guy who was like, oh, I know this place, and you just have to crawl under the fence and go behind the waterfall, and but there's this lady and she plays cello, and he was always this guy that took you to this like amazing place. And then, I was trying to get away from an old boyfriend in Philly, and he was like, move in with me and my roommate. So I moved to New York and stayed with Andy and his friend, Chris Rock, who became a very good friend of mine as well. And now, I'm at his place doing this. It's just like, your story just reminded me of Andy has been a thread of, incredible atmosphere in my life. And, tonight's been really great. So thanks, everybody, for coming.